As promised, Keep My Voice was up on the Hill watching issues that matter most to Grassroots Utah. Let us explain a little bit about what happened during the 2019 legislative session. Keep My Voice was primarily focused on initiative bills. One of those bills was HB 145, sponsored by Representative Norm Thurston. Some of the things we felt were important to include in that bill were to remove the requirement for driver's license and social security numbers altogether. As a reminder, Keep My Voice lost hundreds of removals due to this specific requirement. Another thing we thought was important was stopping the ability to sandbag, meaning the ability to hold on to signatures until the very deadline date. We feel that it is important for the citizens to be able to see when their name has appeared on an initiative and that they have a proper amount of time to be aware of what they signed and remove their name if they receive further education that changes their mind. We added a reminder to the initiative packet itself that explained a little bit more in detail what it means to actually sign an initiative. And finally, the names and voter IDs of every person who has signed an initiative will be made public on the Lieutenant Governor's website. So no more guessing as to whether your name is on an initiative or not. Another bill we focused on was HB 195, sponsored by Representative Steve Handy. This bill originally had the deadline for signature gathering and removals on the same day, but we were able to reinstate the month window that had been there previously. This bill also allows for an argument of support and opposition to be published online with the language of the initiative. It also provides for the Lieutenant Governor to be able to make a statement correcting any what they define as mischaracterizations in either of these arguments. Finally, the last initiative bill that we spent some time working on was HB 133, sponsored by Representative Brad Daw. This bill made the effective dates for initiatives different depending on whether or not it contained a tax increase. Keep My Voice specifically supported this bill because we recognized how much drama had taken place due to initiatives not being able to be amended once they had been certified. For example, Prop 2 accidentally repealed portions of Medicaid code, which was definitely not what was intended. What happened was Utah State Code had been altered slightly and numbers had shifted, which meant that it was then referencing a different section of code than what they had originally planned on. These had to be resolved during a special session that immediately followed the general election, which allowed for the legislature to be able to correct the references in code and make other small changes before the initiative became law. Another example is Prop 3, which expanded Medicaid but didn't provide the proper funding for a complete expansion. Without changes to this particular initiative, the state of Utah was going to be in the hole. Initiatives are not required to be revenue neutral, but the state of Utah has a constitutional mandate to have a balanced budget. In order for this initiative law to take effect while still remaining within the bounds of the state constitution, the legislature decided to start with a slow expansion, waiting on a federal waiver they had been guaranteed after the first year. With this particular bill, we also feel it is important for the legislature to have oversight with initiative bills as they do not go through the same vetting process that typical legislation does. With all three of these bills, a coordinating clause was added, which meant that if all three of them passed, HB 145 would supersede in any place where all three bills dealt with the same code. Since all three did pass, that does happen to be the case, and if you'd like more information, you can find all of that on the legislative website. All three of these bills actually passed on day 44 of the legislative session. 2 abortion bills were brought forward this session. One of them prohibited abortions from being administered for the sole purpose of a baby testing positive for Down syndrome. Another prohibited abortion after 18 weeks, making Utah one of the states with the lowest abortion rates nationwide. A bill regarding conversion therapy was brought up on the Hill, but after a substitute was passed in committee, a lot of outside groups ended up attacking the members of that committee, and it was never brought to the floor in the House for any kind of vote. Hate crimes made an appearance on the Hill for the 4th year in a row, receiving emotional arguments from Representative Lisenby on the House floor, finding herself a victim after working on a substitute for the therapy bill we mentioned before. The bill passed on day 43 of the session. Governor Herbert, during his State of the State, as well as the Speaker of the House in his opening remarks for the session, talked about wanting to put forward a tax cut of somewhere around $200 million. HB 441, sponsored by Representative Tim Quinn, was touted to be that bill. To majorly simplify, this bill was going to overhaul the tax code, taxing services while largely reducing taxes on sales. There was a lot of confusion, some unanswered questions, and a lot of public pushback, so they ended up circling the bill on the House calendar, where it remained until the end of the session. There will be a special session in the summer to work on this further. This year had a record number of bills passed, 573. The previous record was 535, as revealed in the governor's end of session speech. We would love to hear what bills you were paying attention to during this session. Make sure to leave that in the comments down below and join in the discussion.